Have you ever created something you were really proud of, something genuinely good, but it just didn't sell? Well, we're about to dig into this powerful and honestly kind of mind-bending idea that explains why that happens. It's called the wrapper effect, and it all boils down to this: the story around your product can be way more valuable than the product itself. It really all starts with this one question, doesn't it? I'm sure you've asked it yourself at some point. You pour your heart and soul into your work. You know it's high quality. But for some reason, the price tag just doesn't match up. It is so frustrating. But today, we're gonna unpack exactly why this happens and what you can do about it. So the easiest way to think about this is a simple metaphor: the cake versus the wrapper. Now, the cake is your actual product or service, the quality, the features, the thing you spent all that time perfecting. But the wrapper, that's the story, the packaging, the perception around it. And what's wild is that while most of us obsess over making the perfect cake, it's the wrapper that really dictates how much people are willing to pay for it. All right, so let's kick things off with our first big idea: Baingan and Vathuong. This basically translates to good cake and plain wrapper. This really simple analogy is going to set the stage for everything else we talk about. Just imagine a beautifully made, absolutely delicious mooncake. Now, if you stick it in some cheap, crinkly plastic wrap and put it on a shelf, what happens? Well, its value is immediately capped. People just see a snack. It doesn't matter how amazing that cake is on the inside, the simple, uninspired wrapper puts a hard ceiling on its price. So the big question is, what happens when we decide to change that wrapper? And that brings us to our next section, câu chuyện tỷ đô, which means the billion-dollar story. And this is without a doubt the most successful rewrapping in history. A story that literally built a billion-dollar industry out of a pretty common rock. Let's talk about diamonds for a second. When you think of diamonds, you think of rarity, luxury, true love, right? Well, here's the reality check. Diamonds. They aren't rare at all. In fact, they're one of the most common gems on the planet, and you could easily argue that other stones are way more beautiful. So what's their main defining feature? They're just really, really hard. So how in the world did this common, clear stone become one of the most valuable things you can buy? This right here is the billion-dollar wrapper. Just 4 words, a slogan created by the De Beers Company way back in the 1940s. The sentence didn't describe the diamond, it completely redefined it. It created a brand new meaning for it. It transformed a common mineral into a timeless symbol of eternal love. And what's so brilliant is how simple their formula was. You can break it down into 3 steps. First, they invented a powerful, emotional story, linking the stone to love and commitment. Second, and this is the clever part, they tied that story to a core feature of the product. The stone's hardness became a symbol of forever love. And third, to make it all believable, they created artificial scarcity by controlling the mines, which drove up the price and reinforced the idea that diamonds were rare and valuable. They weren't selling a rock, they were selling the idea of forever. Okay, so that's a massive global example. But how does this actually apply to, us, to the services we might offer? In this next section, Guai Lai Zikvu, or rewrapping a service, we're going to bring this whole concept down to a much more personal, relatable level. So check this out. Let's take a musician. His core skill is professional audio production. Now, in the first wrapper, he sells that skill to a bank's marketing department to make a jingle for a short ad campaign. Okay, pretty standard. But in the second wrapper, he sells the exact same skill to a wealthy family to create something he calls an audio family tree, a permanent heirloom piece for future generations. It's the same skill, but the story, the wrapper, is completely different. For the ad music, the first wrapper, the value is limited. For the client, it's just a short-term business expense. So the most he can really charge is around 40 million Vietnamese dong. Now, that's not bad money, but there's a very clear ceiling on what that kind of work is worth. But when he rewraps that exact same service as an audio family tree, the value explodes to 300 million dong. That is a massive jump. So why? What changed? He's not selling a temporary piece of marketing anymore. He's selling a permanent family legacy. He's selling forever, just like De Beers did. And this is the real light bulb moment. It's the exact same playbook. De Beers took a hard stone and sold forever for love. The musician took his audio skills and sold forever for a family's legacy. The value was never really in the product itself. It's in the deep, emotional promise of permanence that the story represents.
And once you start to see this pattern, you honestly begin to see it everywhere. So in our next section, góc nhìn thay đổi tất cả, which means perception is everything, we'll see just how universal this principle really is.
Yeah, this isn't just about diamonds or fancy services. Let's take a look at 3 totally different things: a common plate of food, an online course, and even the style of a house. Think about a simple plate of grim tum, or Vietnamese broken rice. On the street, it's delicious, but it's cheap, it's an everyday meal. But what happens if you wrap it in a high-end restaurant experience? You use premium ingredients, beautiful plating, great service, and suddenly it's a gourmet dish that people will pay a lot more for. The cake is fundamentally the same, but the wrapper, the experience, completely changes its value.
Or how about an investment course? The cake is just financial information. But the really successful ones, they don't just sell you on how to make a profit. They sell you a much bigger, much more emotional wrapper, a life-changing solution. They're not just selling data, they're selling the dream of a totally new life, a permanent transformation. And yep, even architecture does this. Why would someone choose a neoclassical design for their home? Because that specific style is a wrapper. It says more than just, this is a house. It communicates timelessness, prestige, a sense of legacy. The building itself becomes a physical symbol of a family brand, something meant to last, you guessed it, forever. Okay, so all of this brings us to the most important part, the final section, Goilak Chinbang, or rewrapping yourself. How can you take this incredibly powerful idea and actually apply it to your own work, your own business, or even just your career? Here's a really practical 5-step framework. 1, you've got to know your cake. What is your core skill, your fundamental product? 2, find that high-value wrapper, and you do that by asking, what's the ultimate emotional result my customer really wants? 3, create your forever story. Connect what you do to something bigger, something long-term. 4, and this is so important, listen to your happy clients. The exact words they use to praise you, that's where you'll find your best wrappers. And finally, number 5, you've got to be willing to let go of your ego. If the story you're telling isn't connecting, you have to be willing to change it. So that really brings us to the big takeaway for today. It's time to stop obsessing only over the quality of your cake and start thinking about the power of your wrapper. Stop selling a product and start selling a story. Stop selling your skills and start selling the transformation. So I'll leave you with this question to think about. Take a hard look at what you do and ask yourself, what is my most valuable wrapper?